I never believed in prophecies or premonitions. The future, to me, was a blank page waiting to be written upon, not a predetermined path. So, when I first held the yellowed envelope in my hands, I couldn't have anticipated the spiral of events it would unleash. It was a Tuesday morning, ordinary in every sense, until I checked the mail. Between the usual bills and junk mail was an envelope, aged as if it had traveled through time itself. There was no return address, and the postmark was blurred, but I could just make out a date shockingly. It read March 21, 23. A prank, I thought, or maybe a marketing gimmick. Curiosity piqued, I opened it in my small kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window, casting shadows on the linoleum floor. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the edges worn, the handwriting frantic, as if written in a state of panic. The words chilled me to the bone. "Dear Amanda," it began. "You don't know me, but I am writing from the future a century ahead of your time. I have found a way to send this message back to you, in hopes of altering a course of events that will lead to disaster on this very day in your time." My heart raced. It was either an elaborate joke or someone's idea of a twisted game. Yet, the letter felt authentic, its urgency palpable. "Go to these places at these exact times," the letter continued, listing several locations around my small, sleepy town, the old clock tower, the abandoned. I folded the letter, my mind a whirlwind of skepticism and fear. This couldn't be real, could it? Time travel was the stuff of science fiction, not reality. Yet, as an avid reader and a lover of mysteries, I couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that enveloped me. I had always felt like an outsider in my town, a quiet observer of its mundane rhythms. Now, holding a century-old warning in my hands, I felt a surge of responsibility, or was it curiosity? Either way, I knew I wouldn't be able to rest until I uncovered the truth behind this enigmatic warning. I decided to start with the old clock tower. It stood tall at the town's center, a relic from a bygone era, mostly ignored by the townsfolk. As I approached it, the air felt different, heavier somehow. My watch, usually precise, began to tick erratically. I glanced at the letter again, the handwriting almost dancing before my eyes. 11 a.m. clock tower, it read. I checked my phone for the time. 10:58 a.m. 2 minutes. My heart pounded in my chest. Was I walking into a trap, or was this truly a message from the future? There was only one way to find out. I stepped closer to the clock tower, my senses heightened, ready for anything. The air was still, the town quiet, as if holding its breath. And then, at 11 a.m. sharp, the clock tower began to chime, its sound resonating through the empty streets. But it wasn't just any chime. It sounded distorted, as if the bells were underwater. I looked up, squinting against the sun, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a shadow move across the face of the clock. The adventure, it seemed, had just begun. As the distorted chimes of the clock tower echoed through the streets, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The shadow I thought I had seen was gone, but the feeling of unease lingered. The letter rustled in my pocket, a constant reminder of the surreal task I had undertaken. I checked the letter once more. The next location was the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, a place locals often speculated about but rarely visited. It was scheduled for 1 p.m. With a few hours to spare, I decided to visit the local library, an unscheduled stop, hoping to find some information about the town's history or any past events that might shed light on this mystery. The library was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning, and the occasional rustling of pages. I searched through old newspapers and town records, looking for anything out of the ordinary. However, nothing seemed to connect with the cryptic warnings in the letter. Lost in thought, I almost missed the time. Glancing at my watch, I realized it was nearing 1 p.m. I hurried out of the library, my mind racing with possibilities. The abandoned warehouse was a 10-minute drive away, and I made it just in time. The warehouse stood desolate, its once busy docks now silent and empty. As I approached, the air grew colder, and the sense of foreboding intensified. The letter had been specific about the time, but vague about what I should expect. 1 p.m. came, and I watched, my eyes scanning the area for any sign of danger or anomaly. Suddenly, a faint sound caught my attention. It was like a whisper, but when I turned, there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped inside the warehouse. The interior was dark, the only light filtering through broken windows. The whispers grew louder, forming words I couldn't understand. I felt as if the very fabric of reality was thinning, the boundaries between past, present, and future blurring. Then, amidst the shadows, I saw the figure, or more accurately, the suggestion of a figure, like a heat shimmer in the summer air. It was moving towards me, its form unclear, but its presence undeniable. Panic surged within me, but I stood my ground, remembering the letter's plea for action. As the figure drew closer, the whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices. I could hear snippets of conversations, laughter, cries, sounds of life that once filled this place. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished, and the whispers fell silent. I was alone again, but the experience left me shaken and more convinced than ever that the letter was more than just a hoax. There was something happening in this town, something inexplicable and deeply unsettling. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. The final location mentioned in the letter was the town square at 3 p.m. Whatever was going to happen, I knew I had to be there. I had to uncover the truth, not just for my sake, but for the town's. With a newfound determination, I set off towards the town square, the afternoon sun casting long shadows behind me. The walk to the town square was a journey through my own racing thoughts. The events at the warehouse had shaken me to my core. The whispers, the shadowy figure, the sense of another time and place overlapping with our own, it was like living a ghost story. But there was no time to dwell on fear, the clock was ticking towards the final warning in the letter. The town square was as familiar as my own reflection, a place I'd passed through countless times. But today, under the weight of the letter's ominous prediction, it felt alien, a stage set for an unknown drama. As I approached, the square was unusually quiet. The usual bustle of people was absent, replaced by a stillness that seemed to wait with bated breath. I checked the time on my phone, 2:58 p.m. 2 minutes until the prophesied moment. I remembered the letter's words, urging me to trust my instincts. My eyes scanned the area, searching for anything out of place. The historic fountain at the center of the square, the old town hall with its clock face, the rows of shuttered shops all were as they should be, yet nothing felt right. Then, as the town hall clock began to chime 3 p.m., it happened. The air around me shimmered, like heat on a hot road, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sound of the chimes distorted, stretching into a low, droning hum. I felt a pressure in my ears, as if I were diving deep underwater. Around me, the square changed. The buildings aged and then renewed in rapid succession, flickering through decades and seconds. The people phantoms of past and future appeared and disappeared, living out fragments of lives in the blink of an eye. I stood there, rooted to the spot, witnessing the impossible. Time itself was unraveling, revealing its tapestry to be not a line, but a web, interconnected and fragile. Amidst the chaos, a figure emerged from the town hall. Not a ghostly apparition like before, but a person, solid and real. It was a woman, dressed in clothes that seemed to belong to another era. Our eyes met across the shifting square, and in her gaze, I saw recognition and desperation. She started towards me, but with each step, she seemed to struggle against an invisible force. The air crackled around her, and with a sudden jolt, she was thrown backward, disappearing into the fluctuating facade of the town hall. The square began to stabilize, the echoes of other times fading away, leaving behind the familiar face of my town. But the woman's desperate gaze lingered in my mind. Who was she? A traveler from another time, like the author of the letter. The chimes of the town hall clock rang clear now, marking the end of the hour. The event the letter had warned about had occurred, but it had raised more questions than it answered. I knew then that this mystery was far from over. The letter had brought me here, but it was just the beginning. I had to find out who sent it, why they chose me, and what connection I had to this temporal maelstrom. With determination, I turned towards the town hall, the site of the last anomaly. It was time to delve deeper into the heart of this mystery, to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the fabric of time. The future, it seemed, was not as unwritten as I had believed. The sun was beginning to dip towards the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the town square, as I made my way towards the town hall. The building, a steadfast symbol of our small community, now appeared to me as a gateway to mysteries untold. My heart was racing, a mixture of fear and an unquenchable thirst for answers. The woman's image haunted my thoughts. Was she a victim of these temporal disturbances, or somehow the architect of them? As I stepped inside the town hall, the silence was overwhelming. The usual hum of activity was absent, replaced by a stillness that seemed to echo the bizarre events of the day. The corridors were empty, the offices abandoned, as if the building itself was holding its breath. I found myself drawn to the main archive room, a repository of the town's history. Dust motes danced in the beams of light filtering through the windows, and the smell of old paper and wood filled the air. If answers were to be found, they would be here, amidst the chronicles of the past. Combing through old records and newspaper clippings, I searched for any mention of similar events or peculiar happenings in the town's history. Hours passed, the only sound that of flipping pages and my own steady breathing. Then, I found it, a small, almost forgotten article from over a century ago. It spoke of unexplained phenomena in the town. Visions of other times, sounds from nowhere, and a woman, a researcher in the field of temporal physics, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The parallels were uncanny. My mind raced with possibilities. Could the woman from the article and the one I saw in the town square be the same? Was she trapped in some kind of temporal loop? And what of the letter was it sent by her, reaching across time to seek help? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture they formed was one of complexity and danger. If the events of today were a rupture in time, then the stakes were higher than I could have imagined. I gathered the articles and records, determined to delve deeper into this mystery. As I left the archive room, the fading light cast long shadows across the hall, giving the town hall an otherworldly feel. It was as if the building itself was part of this temporal web, a nexus point where past and future collided. Outside, the town was quiet, the streets empty, as if in anticipation of something yet to come. I felt a sense of urgency, a need to understand and perhaps prevent a catastrophe that had been a century in the making. My next stop would be the local university's physics department. Perhaps there, I could find someone who could shed light on the phenomena I had witnessed. Someone who could help me unravel the enigma of the letter and its dire warning. As I drove through the twilight streets, the weight of the day's revelations bore heavily on me. I was no longer just a curious bystander. I was now a key player in a story that spanned 100 years. A story that, I feared, was far from over. The university's physics department was housed in a modern building, a stark contrast to the historic architecture of the town hall. As I entered, the fluorescent lights and the sterile smell of the hallway felt like a jolt to my senses, still reeling from the day's surreal experiences. I needed answers, and I hoped to find them here. I managed to find an expert in theoretical physics, Professor Harding, who listened to my story with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. I laid out everything: the letter, the events at the clock tower, warehouse, and town square, and the article about the vanished researcher. Initially, he dismissed my account as fanciful, but the mention of temporal physics and the century-old disappearance of a researcher in the same field made him pause. He perused the articles I had brought with intense concentration, his brow furrowing with every line. After a long silence, he spoke. Temporal anomalies are theoretically possible, he admitted reluctantly, but actually witnessing them it's unprecedented. He explained the concept of time as a non-linear dynamic field, susceptible to disturbances under extreme conditions. But what could cause such disturbances? I pressed, desperate for answers. That's the million-dollar question, Professor Harding replied, his eyes reflecting a professional curiosity that seemed to override his initial disbelief. It could be a natural phenomenon or something man-made, but either way, it's dangerous. If the fabric of time is tearing, it could lead to catastrophic consequences. I shuddered at the thought. The woman in the town square, could she be the key to all this? Was she trying to fix what had been broken? Professor Harding agreed to help, intrigued by the challenge and the scientific implications. We decided to set up monitoring equipment in the town square, where the most intense activity had occurred. As night fell, we worked under the dim streetlights, setting up sensors and equipment. The town square was eerily quiet, the usual nightlife seemingly subdued by an unspoken apprehension. As we activated the equipment, a low hum filled the air, almost imperceptible at first. The sensors flickered and whirred, capturing data that Professor Harding watched with growing concern. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and the familiar sense of disorientation washed over me. The equipment went haywire, lights blinking rapidly, dials spinning uncontrollably. And then, she appeared. The woman from the town square, her expression one of desperation and determination. She was real, solid, standing right in front of us. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice echoing as if from a distance. "I'm trapped in time." Professor Harding and I exchanged shocked glances. Here was a proof of the temporal disturbances, standing before us, a living paradox. The woman, gasping for breath, explained that she was indeed the researcher from a century ago, caught in a temporal loop caused by an experiment gone awry. She had been trying to send warnings through time, hoping to prevent the disaster she had inadvertently caused. Our task was clear. We had to help her close the rift in time, to repair the fabric of reality before it tore apart completely. The future, our present, and her past depended on it. As we began to work, the town square around us flickered through different years, a kaleidoscope of time spinning out of control. The air was charged with energy, the very essence of time itself. We were racing against the clock, not just the one in the town hall, but against time itself. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and in our hands lay the power to mend it or let it unravel forever. The night air was electric, charged with an energy that seemed to pulsate through the very ground beneath our feet. The woman, who introduced herself as Dr. Eliza Harrow, was a vision from the past, her presence a constant reminder of the thinning veil between years. Professor Harding and I worked tirelessly, guided by Dr. Harrow's expertise. She instructed us on how to recalibrate the equipment to stabilize the temporal fluctuations. The task was daunting, the science behind it nearly unfathomable, but our determination was fueled by the urgency of the situation. As we adjusted dials and rewired circuits, the phantasmal scenes around us grew more intense. Visions of the town's past and possible futures played out like ghostly echoes, horse-drawn carriages rolling through the streets, futuristic vehicles zooming by, scenes of peace interspersed with flashes of chaos. Dr. Harrow explained that the experiment she had conducted a century ago was meant to be a breakthrough in understanding time. Instead, it had created a rift, a tear in the fabric of reality. Her attempts to send warnings through time had only partially succeeded, manifesting as the letter I received and the strange phenomena around town. The gravity of our task weighed heavily on me. We weren't just trying to prevent a disaster, we were attempting to heal a wound in the very essence of existence. Finally, after hours that felt like an eternity, Dr. Harrow signaled us to initiate the final sequence. The equipment hummed loudly, vibrating with the energy we were channeling. The air shimmered, the visions around us growing more chaotic, overlapping in a dizzying display. Dr. Harrow stood at the center of the storm, her hands on the main console, her voice steady as she counted down. 3, 2, 1 now. Professor Harding hit the switch, and a blinding light enveloped us. Time seemed to stop, the world holding its breath. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the light receded. We looked around, dazed. The town square was back to normal, the historic buildings standing stoic and unchanged. The equipment was silent, its purpose fulfilled. Dr. Harrow, however, was fading, her form becoming translucent. "Thank you," she whispered, a smile of peace and relief on her face. "You saved us all." With those final words, she disappeared, her existence returning to its rightful place in history. In the aftermath, Professor Harding and I were left in a state of awe and disbelief. We had witnessed and participated in something beyond the realm of known science. The town slowly came to life as dawn approached, unaware of how close it had come to the brink of unraveling. In the days that followed, we dismantled the equipment, our task complete. The town returned to its usual rhythm, but for me, it would never be the same. I walked the streets with a new perspective, a deeper understanding of the delicate tapestry of time. The letter, now just a piece of aged paper, sat on my desk, a memento of the incredible journey. Dr. Harrow's sacrifice and bravery would remain a secret, her story untold, but her impact undeniable. As I gazed out of my window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, I realized that the future was once again a blank page, but now filled with infinite possibilities. The past, present, and future were intertwined, each moment a precious thread in the vast and beautiful tapestry of time.